This is Mr. Glass for the first hour of the film.
What have you done, Elijah?
Servus Freunde, my name is Jimmy Cage, and because I want to give some extra context for this film and make the introduction a little bit longer, I will say where I stand with this one right away. I just saw M. Night Shyamalan's Glass a few hours ago with two friends. Both of them really liked the film a lot, but unfortunately I was on the exact opposite side. I'm already curious to see where it will land with critics and the audience, but at least for me it was a big disappointment. And in this review I will tell you exactly why Glass doesn't work at all. There's a very early cameo in Glass by writer and director M. Night Shyamalan, in which his character, who was a drug dealer in Unbreakable, is saying that he went through some bad times, but now he's back on top. I'm paraphrasing here, but you get the idea. This is of course addressing the fact that Shyamalan has been a punchbag by many critics and movie fans for a very long period of time after each of his films became more and more laughable and bad. But with his latest two he seems to be back on track. Both The Visit and Split has been received at least somewhat positive, and more important, at least to the studios, they made a ton of money, especially considering how cheap those Blumhouse productions were to make. I did like 2015's The Visit just fine. It was a short, diverting 90-minute horror comedy that didn't take itself too seriously. Split on the other hand got very hyped, and unfortunately I think it's mediocre at best. To be completely honest, it left me rather annoyed. But the big twist at the end, or reveal if you prefer that word, was pretty cool because it created a narrative thread all the way back to the year 2000 when one of his best films, Unbreakable, was released. That one came out in a time when the big rise of superhero movies was just about to start, and it was an extremely fresh look at the possibilities of such stories. It was a sensitive, slow-paced character drama that was also a hidden superhero movie. Then almost 17 years later, Split was released, which is a horror movie that's also revealed to take place in a world where superheroes exist, when at the very end it is connected to Unbreakable. With that neat little trick, Shyamalan created what's the new hot stuff in recent years, a shared universe. So even though I don't like Split, I was very curious to see what he might do with the third film in what suddenly became a trilogy. Now you can decide for yourself what to make of that mentioned cameo of Shyamalan. He has a history of putting himself in his own movies, and more than once his alter egos pointed to a certain delusion of grandeur. When his cameo happens in Glass, I was still very much on board with the film. To see Bruce Willis back as David Dunn, a man who's apparently indestructible, his only weakness being water, and more so to see him back united with his now grown-up son Joseph, was really promising. In this case the filmmakers were lucky because child actor Spencer Treat Clark grew up to become a decent actor, and both of them trying to find James McAvoy's character of the Horde is kind of intriguing. But after around 15 minutes I guess the setting changes and the film lost me very quickly from then on. For Glass I decided not to watch any trailers, so I really didn't know what to expect. As with all of my reviews, this will be spoiler free, but be warned that I will talk about some story elements, because the story and the screenplay is what I dislike most about the film. But since many of it is already in the two main trailers, I will address it. But to start with the positive, the performances are mostly quite good. Nowadays you never know if Bruce Willis is going to show up or just sleepwalk through a film, and I thought he brought at least a little bit to the table here. Not as much as I was hoping for, and I will come to that later, but at least he played his character. James McAvoy, like in Split, is giving it everything he got, and he's great. His character, or rather some of his Split personalities, can be a little bit irritating, but it doesn't cross the line of getting too obnoxious. Of course, Samuel L. Jackson is back as Elijah Price, aka Mr. Glass, and he was the one I was looking forward to the most. I watched that big reveal at the end of Unbreakable a lot back when I was growing up, and I just rewatched it for this review and it still gave me goosebumps. But his role in the new film plays out almost exactly the way you would assume, and since the trailer is giving it away anyway, yes, the bad guys are teaming up. Which would be awesome, but it's done in the most stereotypical and easiest way. Also, it takes forever to get there. Now there's an important new character in Glass, the psychiatrist Dr. Ellie Staple, played by Sarah Paulson. She gives a good performance as well, but I absolutely hated her character for the most part of the movie. And not in a good way of hating, as in hating the villain because he's so evil. I hated her because she's so tightly knot to a story that frustrated me to no end, and her behavior didn't make much sense in what Shyamalan was trying to tell. As we've known from the trailers, the movie takes place in a mental hospital where Dr. Staple is treating our three protagonists because they think they are superheroes. This is a trope that has been used in countless horror movies. Characters locked up in an institute and the personnel do not believe them that they are some kind of monster. Take Nightmare on Elm Street 3 for example. Now of course it's slightly variated because the characters are the monsters themselves, but it's frustrating here for many reasons. The first being that the audience of course already knows that these people really do have powers. Unless Shyamalan wants to completely pull the rug from under our feet and declare everything we've seen somehow false. We spent almost a full hour, maybe even longer, with this notion that they are maybe just imagining their powers. Something that we know isn't true ever since Unbreakable, which was released 19 years ago. At one point, Bruce Willis's character even considers the idea that the Doctor might be right. What the hell? One thing that made Unbreakable so wonderful was the way his own son had to convince him that he's a real-life superhero, which he was now for 2 decades almost. And now a few days at a mental hospital is almost changing his mind? There's also a very big and obvious clue that there might be more to them after all. I mean, which doctor who's convinced they are just normal people and who wants to convince them of that is still installing huge safekeeping devices that address their weak points. They have a giant tank of water installed right next to David's room with countless tubes attached to it in case he needs to be controlled. This makes no sense. I mean, it could if you explore this more, but she's just saying, you really do believe that this water will make you weak? But more important, for me it didn't make sense from a storytelling perspective. I don't want to claim that the movie is so dumb that it really wants us to believe the Doctor might be right, but it's not adding anything interesting here to go with such an angle for such a long amount of time. At the very end it will lead to something that I thought was a cool idea, and on paper alone I liked it a lot, but it wasn't explored enough and the journey to it felt so tedious and downright boring. There's really not much happening in the film, and I don't mean that there needs to be action, but the interactions between the characters aren't well developed at all. For starters, our three main protagonists barely interact with each other at all. As I hinted at with my very bad impression at the beginning, Samuel L. Jackson's character Glass is supposedly sedated for the first half of the film, and that he has some kind of master plan is really no big surprise, so you're only waiting for him to snap out of it. The way he does is super generic. Willis's character David Dunn is locked away and not much is done with him. McAvoy and his different personalities get more screen time, but we barely get anything new about either one of these guys. For Glass, it's the "I'm not a mistake" routine we already know. For Dunn, there isn't much at all except his brief struggle with his identity, which we already know from Unbreakable, and the Horde is doing his or their show of different characters. Instead of the three interacting with each other, playing some kind of twisted, tense cat and mouse game, we get each of them mostly alone with the Doctor, or even worse, two rather stupid acting staff members. Sprinkled in are scenes that show David's son Joseph trying to support his father, Elijah's mother talking about her relationship to his son, and Casey Cook, the lead girl from Split, played by Anya Taylor-Joy, trying to figure out her connection to Kevin Wendell Crump, the main personality of the Horde. All of them don't add that much flavor to this long-winded affair, and especially latter felt either totally useless or even worse, very problematic, and this was something that already bothered me a lot in Split. The way both films treat serious topics like mental illness or rape in a very superficial fashion. The original Unbreakable had a fresh spin on the comic book superhero mythology and also a very sincere emotional core. Glass feels extremely redundant and all references to comic lore painfully obvious, and while Unbreakable made you care for its tragic characters through a wonderfully constructed story, great acting as well as Shyamalan's very particular restrained or whispering melancholic atmosphere, Split as well as Glass feel gimmicky and superficial. Glass is neither working as a drama nor as a mystery or horror film, and also not as a clever commentary or let alone a deconstruction of the superhero genre. It has a runtime of 129 minutes and there's absolutely no reason for it. It doesn't explore any of its themes in an interesting way, and instead it serves old tropes and already known relationships. This wasn't the epic confrontation between three fascinating characters that has been promised in the marketing materials at all. But before I end the review, I want to at least give some credit to the camera work by director of cinematography Mike Giolakis. There are quite a few very good shots in it. For example, a hostage situation at the beginning where the camera is following a character around and around, or how it turns upside down when the beast is approaching from the ceiling one time. And one last word to the reveals the film holds for us. I like the ideas behind them, but not how they were done. Half of it is very obvious and the film still handles them as the biggest twist under the sun. And again, the time to get us there and the way how we get there really bored me. So in German I'd say, für mich ist M. Night Shyamalan leider noch immer nicht wirklich zurück. Nachdem ich schon Split nicht mochte, konnte ich leider auch mit Glass nicht viel anfangen. Das abgenutzte Setting, die müde Geschichte und Charaktere, die auf ausgetretenen Faden wandeln. Der Film verschenkt so viel Potenzial und ist weder spannend noch bedrohlich oder besonders clever. I give Glass 4 out of 10. It's more like 4.4, but I don't do that.
What do we call you, sir?
First name, Mr. Last name, Glass.
Alright, that's it like always. Comment below and let me know what you think about Glass. I really wished the first movie of the year would be better, but maybe you like it. Tell me in the comments, do you like Unbreakable? Do you like Split? Do you like Glass? Do you understand my problems with it? Next Friday, Dennis the Bodymeister and I will talk about a great Indian movie, Andhadhun. And on Sunday, finally, my top 10 best movies of 2018 list will be uploaded. Until then, you can hit me up on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram simply at TheJimmyCage. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give me a thumbs up, share, subscribe, whatever you like. And make sure you hit that bell for all I have to tell.